Welcome back to the Tailosive Movie Reviews with your co-host, me, Mike. I'm back, finally, after so long, and I brought along someone who you didn't really expect, someone who tagged along for the last episode, and I felt, you know what, he likes Star Wars, I think. Don't you, Randy?
I love the Star Wars, the wars that take place in the stars. And I think I got lost. I was like, this isn't the tech podcast or Evie. It looks comfy. I think I'll settle in.
Well, thanks for joining me, Randy. I appreciate it. And we're, as you can tell by the title, listeners or viewers, we are continuing the Star Wars saga that me and Nick started, oh goodness, like 6 or 7, a long time ago at this point. Maybe actually almost a year ago.
Did you say Nick?
Yeah.
Now
Nick
there's a name I haven't heard in a long time.
Basically, him and his Star Wars that he's doing, but with cameras. Anyways,
that's right.
We're reviewing episode 1, the metaphorical beginning of this saga. It's the beginning of the prequels, and we've got an A-list cast or whatever, but I guess to get on the wonderful scoring thing that we have going on in this podcast, Randy, out of 8, what would you rank this movie?
Out of 8. Okay. I'm going to give you what I had rated before rewatching it again today. Okay. I would have given it, out of 8, I would have given it like a 5 or a 6.
Okay. That's kind of fair.
After watching it today, I give it like a strong 7.
That nostalgia's hitting you hard.
No, well, you would, yeah. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that, like, I remember exactly where I was. I'm old enough to have watched it in the theaters, and I was...
Jeez.
Yeah, I was 9 when it came out. And,
holy moly.
Oh, yeah. And I remember exactly where I was, and this is, I was telling you, like, this is, like, our generation's Star Wars. This is our collective films. And immediately I felt like I was 9 again, watching everything, hearing the John Williams score, hearing the Skywalker Ranch sound effects, seeing these casts like young again, and just actually following the storyline this time as an adult now, studying the storyline and actually paying really close attention to the dialogue, and also with hindsight of understanding how 2 and 3 are going to play out, and then also you knowing that coming into it when that movie had came out that Anakin is Darth Vader, so having all of that, and then the nostalgic part is going through the train wreck of the sequel trilogy. I would definitely be like, this movie was so underrated and undervalued for all that hate that it got. If Jar Jar Binks is supposed to be the worst thing that happens in that movie, then that is a darn good film, all things considering. And Jar Jar becomes a little bit more tolerable when you realize everything he stacked up against to the sequel. And unfortunately, that's the lens I have to look at it through now, is the sequel trilogy. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, at least he had character development, at least.
I mean, the guy goes from a banished loser that his whole society hates him to a general in the same movie.
Yes.
And then in the next movie or the movie afterward, he becomes a senator.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
biggest
good character development.
Yeah. I mean, you can't knock the prequels for that. Taking someone that is a loser and turning him into like a tolerable idiot.
Yeah.
I guess.
He still has his quirks. He says he's a Misa clumsy and all that. Okay. But at least you can see, assuming we're not going to poke into rumors or lore or anything like that. He's no Sith Lord, assuming that. Okay. Assuming he's not, then he has a good heart. And you see that his heart's in the right place, and his moral compass is what points him in the right direction.
He's very innocent.
He's
innocent. What I
innocent.
found in this whole movie. Like, the only thing that was a little bit less innocent, which is probably the whole Gungan societal, like, different from whatever stuff, just different galactic races and their different mindsets. At one point, he calls Padme hot to Anakin when they're in the speeder going to, when they get to Coruscant for the first time. And I'm just like, why would you tell a little kid that she's very hot? And then like, that girl's very hot. All right, screen wipe to the next scene or whatever. Like, what? Why is this?
This is the Supreme Chancellor. It goes right to that.
Yeah, Chancellor Valorum.
Yeah.
And then you get Palpatine right after that.
Senator Palps.
Before we go too deep, I want to give my score, and then we'll go more into your opinion on it. I would give this movie, out of the whole Star... it's kind of hard because you want to put it like in the realm of the Star Wars saga. Like, here's how it rates against the others, but you also want to put it against all the other movies that I've reviewed or we've reviewed on the podcasts here. I want to give it like a 4 or 4.5. It's a decent introduction to these characters that we're going to be following around, even though some of them get killed. I guess specifically just Qui-Gon. Spoilers, I guess, after 23 years.
Darth Vader's whose father? What?
It's a failing grade, but I see what they were doing. Like you, I wasn't 9 at the time. I was 4 at the time. But I do remember watching the original trilogy with my mom. And then afterwards, she hands me this DVD. So it's already on DVD, but she hands me this DVD. It says Phantom Menace Star Wars. And she's like, you can watch this. I'm like, is this my Star Wars? And then I put it in, I watch it, I'm like, this is my Star Wars. I like it. This is my own. Like, my mom had her own. Now I've got my own. I felt an ownership with this new Star Wars film that was thrust into my hand. And now I get to experience from my own childhood eyes. So yeah, like you, there's a little bit of nostalgia that I have with this movie.
Yeah.
But I try to peel away some of those rose lenses on my eyes.
All right, hang on. If I was to have it stand as an independent film,
kind of hard.
It's hard. It's hard. But if I was to, I would bracket it more to like a out of 8.
It's tough, right?
I'd give it a weak C. So what? A 5? 6?
That's about 5.5.
Yeah. I would give it like a weak C. It passed more than a D passing, but I give it a weak C because there are some there's some inconsistencies. From a script point, I find inconsistencies. A shooting, like the actual when they did the principal production of filming everything, to Obi-Wan having to come back and do reshoots, and his wig stands out so bad. Oh,
his hair's like perfect in one scene. You're like, whoa.
he the same scene of him talking to Jar Jar is like, they'll find us and they will blow us into an oblivion, and then like it just. Qui-Gon's talking to something, and you just see Ewan McGregor standing there with now a wig one, and he's just nodding his head. I'm like, did he really need to come back to film a B shot of him just going like that? Felt kind of not needed, but 1999 quality of work. I can't do that, and that's the problem. Why it's hard for me to judge it in a vacuum as a standalone thing, because I can't help but then equate like any other film that would have came out in 99 and going forward would have visual issues. Production, it's some stuff. A lot of stuff is very campy. It's not a dark film. Even when they touch on slavery and not equality of people, it's still kind of campy, and that's just how it was back then. So I try not to judge it on those merits, but as a standalone film, it felt like a lot of things were packed in, and they packed it in for the sake of we're nodding to Anakin one day being evil by playing the Darth Vader that
every single other scene with Yoda. Fear. He has fear. No.
Yeah.
Fear.
And fear leads to this, leads to that. That's such a fallacy that one thing just means it automatically will lead to that. Like, fear is such a natural reaction that people have. Fear is what kicks up your fight or flight instincts and stuff like that. But so it's almost like they try to make the Jedi seem almost so monk wise, and they're doing so much, and it's
from
just there's
little child to adult. Like, are you expecting a kid to be like, I'm not scared or anything like that, or like, you just took me away from my mom, but I'm not scared. Looking at all these strange people in a circle. You mentioned earlier other movies that came out around this time with visual effects. In 1999, Tarzan came out. The Iron Giant came out. Pokemon 2000 came out. It's an old throwback to people who recognize that. American Pie came out. Big Daddy came out with Adam Sandler and Cole Sprouse. Stuart Little came out.
My goodness.
So these are a lot of different movies that it was stacked up against at the time. So I'd say for the time, I think Phantom Menace was pretty impressive visually. Yeah. But it's kind of hard also to look at that objectively because, at least on my experience watching it, I watched it through Disney Plus. And as many people know with all these Star Wars movies, for some reason, George Lucas or whoever else decides to re-edit all these movies and reshoot or like add in characters that weren't there before for some reason, or change a line or change a scene or something else. Try to beef
Han
up
shot
the
first.
Look.
I stand
McClunky.
By that. Yeah.
I guess what I point as like shots, I don't know if you noticed or if you remember in the first iteration of this movie, Yoda was a puppet.
Yes, and that visual change is not because of Disney Plus. It happened after they completed Episode 3. I remember that vividly. Every special edition that came out, they did a special edition that happened. The first, what I call the Lucas edits, happened in '97, and he added extra scenes in the extra animals. He added Boba Fett in Episode 4 where he was not in Episode 4, for example. He was put in there strictly for fandom. He's been doing fanfare things like that since '97 that I can like distinctly point at. And I remember seeing these, and they were like, "Oh, it's more not inclusive. It's more immersive." And I'm like, R2-D2's behind a CGI rock now in the great reveal of Ben Kenobi. And I'm like, I don't know if that's good storytelling, but that's
he's there. Look, he's there.
There he is. But they added Yoda after they had completed Episode 3 in 2005. Shortly after 2005, they did the complete trilogy, or they did the complete
CG-fication.
Yeah, not only that, then we'll go back and we'll cover that, and we'll touch that more on Attack of the Clones. But I was looking to see if they were going to add something for Disney Plus, because I remember here's a cool cleanup. This is just, they were cleaning it up, they were touching up something. I was like, all right, that's cool. I think even if on YouTube, I don't want to do it just because we're doing the show now, but I think if we look on YouTube and we try to find an original trailer of the Phantom Menace, you will see Darth Maul when he does the famous psh, and he ignites. You can actually see the second blade badly edited to be invisible before it ignites it. And part of the cleanup that they did afterwards, the same time they added Yoda as a CGI, they went and they actually fixed Maul's blade so there is no weird after outlining thing happening there. So I remember vividly the OG, and for all its flaws too, I'm like, all right, that's cool. And then paying attention to how they just kind of CGI the heck out of everything, and I'm like, well, okay, fine. You want to make Coruscant look more in depth, or you want to get these shots of them, coming down into the cities and stuff. Like, I get it. But I like the option, kind of like, actually, you would get this, Mike. I like the option of being able to toggle between the original and any updates the way you would like on Halo or something like that.
On the Master Chief Collection, where you can go from the original graphics to the remastered graphics.
Because sometimes the original is just better.
I agree. It would have been nice. I don't think they would have been able to fit all that onto one DVD. You'd probably have to have 2 DVDs of it if you were to buy it at a store in 2006 or whatever.
Yeah.
But I do agree that would have been a better choice than what they do now, just because I brought up the Yoda thing, is while watching this, especially with like the scene with Watto, or even the Gungan fight or the Gungan droid army fight, but especially with Watto, in that scene, he changes his texture so many different times. You can see the new version at first, and then it switches to the old version in some parts of the conversation, then back to the new version, and I'm like, why is this not sitting right with me? And I'm looking at the character, I'm pausing, I'm like, what's wrong with him? It's like the lighting is different, and then I'd hit play and wait a little bit and hit pause. I'm like, this isn't the same model. And then again with like a droid fight against the Gungans is where maybe some of that appreciation does come in for the cleanup animation that they did, only because a lot of that fight looked like Star Wars Battlefront 1 on the PS2 or PS1 or whatever. Like, it's very flat. The shadows are very sharp. You can definitely tell, like, this is very early animation. And it, again, when it contrasts to, like, some of the touch-ups that they do, you're like, oh, it's very clean here with, like, the bombs, the bombas or whatever. Yeah, anyways, the animation is the biggest distraction for me in this, but I think what saves it after 23 years is John Williams and his masterpiece of music. And I wanted to ask you, because you are a musician, what do you think of the music in this movie, and does it stand the test of time?
The music is why I give it, like, in the whole... when I don't look at it as a standalone, but when I have to look at it with context, is the reason why I give it a 7 out of 8. Because the music so heavily affected. When I saw Darth Maul show up and did the Duel of Fates again, I shivered again. On TV, on my big screen, I have this big old LG TV out there, and I got a sound bar, subwoofer, and I just like... it's still in the days, like, I don't care. I'm turning it up. I'm done. Like, I'm up, like, I'm a kid again, and I'm grabbing a broomstick to act like I'm a, Jedi or a Sith. And I was... John Williams, might not be a surprise for you, but anyone else listening, actually had a very big impact on my influence of how I write music. The sole reason why I ever incorporate strings into anything that I do is because of John Williams first and foremost. John Williams taught me the art of building something epic in anything. I can make something so mundane sound just a little bit better. Like, I can make something ugly turn passable with strings. And I learned that technique from John Williams, specifically Duel of Fates, and then everything moving forward past that, all his music and everything. Because then if we step out of Star Wars for a second, John Williams doing Home Alone made Home Alone so much cooler because of the music that he scored. And then we could throw in Indiana Jones, Jaws, Jurassic Park, iconic movies and equally iconic music. And such a big fan and a huge influence on me. He was my first introduction about like how I would approach like orchestral type of styles of music. Second to him, and then the second person would have been Marty O'Donnell with the Halo soundtrack.
Oh yeah,
everything like those. Yeah, those two guys. Not even gonna like front for a second. Heavily influenced how I write like instrumental music. Even when I do something as quirky as like little beats and theme songs or whatever, like there's anything that feels epic. Like if someone's like, man, that's a Randy tune, as someone's told me once, like, oh, that sounds like a Randy tune. Anything that comes off like a Randy tune because they can just hook to something. It's like, yep, that's the thing that he would do. I would credit that to John Williams, and then Next to him would be Marty O'Donnell, but definitely John Williams is one of the hugest influence on me from such an early he imprinted that music on me, and I loved everything that he's ever touched. He's made everything so epic, and he could take only John Williams can take a movie about politics like Episode 1 and make it like sound somewhat epic, and when they're like, I vote for no confidence, and just it's like, okay, all right, fine.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, with you and the strings, it's me and the horns. That's what gets me. John Williams taught me that brass and all of that really can tug on heartstrings and nostalgia instantly. Especially with like the Obi-Wan Kenobi trailer. You get the horn, you get the strings, and you're like, I get it. I know exactly why I'm watching. I know to be excited just because of a few notes being played out of these instruments.
Music has the ability, when done right, because it is supposed to be a subconscious thing, secondary to the plot of the movie and the narration and visuals too. Music is supposed to be a supplementary piece to all of that, but when done right, music influences and actually affects the outcome of how you are going to feel walking. That's why every and like you just can't help every time something finishes with and then it ends, and you just know it's over. Music.
Time to go to the next thing.
Yeah, it's everything about that. So the music, to answer your question, bring it back. The music it does stand the test of time. He doesn't fail. Anything that John Williams touch is going to be like, for me, he's so picky about what he chooses to work on that I know that if he works on it, if he gives it a chance, no excuse. I'm going to give it a chance. I'm going to watch whatever he works on then, because he keeps batting home runs with them.
I think what gets me in this movie as well, another thing that kind of triggers my uncanny valley sense, I guess, is when Qui-Gon or Obi-Wan or anyone, I guess, talks with Jar Jar Binks. Because in the background, or at least like behind the scenes, it's just a head on a stick or a head on top of someone else wearing a blue suit or a green suit or whatever. Or they're just looking at like a ping pong ball floating up above. And you can always see the eyesight or the eye line is never direct, or like you can always tell it's like off a little bit, like behind the character. It's never like directed on them, which I think has gotten better with time. Star Wars, Marvel, all these other companies, of course, or IPs, have gotten better with visual effects and made it look like Alita Battle Angel is in the room with you.
They don't do wide shots anymore. Like when Qui-Gon grabs his tongue and like, don't do that again. Mm-hmm. That wide shot, it feels like, well, if there's enough movement happening, then you can almost like excuse and it won't trick your brain like something feels off, like something's wrong. But when they have wide shots of Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and Jar Jar all talking to each other, like they're the three Spider-Mans, and you're like, you could see that's all. Just when you talk about how they gotten better with it, they just don't do those angles anymore. Episode 9, they were very smart about how they portrayed Carrie Fisher and how they were going to use her with all the old shots that they had, anything that they had a CGI in it. They were just being very careful with it and not to give it too much screen time for long periods of time, because then you will start to feel that effect again. And that's where you're right. I think it just something for its time. Jar Jar had too much single shot screen time, and when it's on Jar Jar for that long, and everyone who's supposed to interact with Jar Jar, it's like, oh, there's something slightly off, just a little bit, enough that's taking me out of the element. But
it's not his personality. Not solely that.
Okay, hang on. I want to talk about the script for a sec.
Sure.
I came across this thing about Palpatine and why he makes like the perfect villain and why he
somehow he came back.
Oh, God. Listen, whenever in doubt, you question your abilities to be good at your job. Somebody wrote that and it got approved up the chain, and that made it in the final edit of somehow he came back. And
some executive producer gave it a thumbs up.
And we're supposed to excuse that. Ian McDiarmid is an amazing actor, and I'm glad I want him to come back for any and everything every time. But if he's to do it, it has to be done right, and I will not excuse Episode 9. I've already subconsciously in my brain made peace that the sequel trilogy is not canon. All right, if we could just write off things about what's canon, not canon, in my brain, all that's not canon, and I'm just looking at these actors. I'm watching fan fiction. That's what I'm watching. I'm biased. Like that's my Star Wars. That's the one I grew up on. Now about the script, understanding the prequels and understanding Palpatine, and I say Palpatine because the greater picture actually has to do with his manipulation.
Oh yeah,
and they never really hit it even from the first time around. And I mean, like watching it in '99, in 2002, and then in 2005. In 2005, it's Palpatine is Darth Sidious and he's been orchestrating the whole thing, but they never hit it in regards to like the actor's the same actor. Everyone's supposed to. It's just something either you know or you don't know. And I remember watching interviews with the cast. Even they used to do when they came to Comic-Con in 2002. No, sorry, 2003. I went to Comic-Con and they had a lot of the cast there. They were just kind of all just talking, but it was definitely more focused on, the Skywalker arc more than anything else. But they never hid that Ian portrays both a senator turned chancellor and also Darth Sidious. He's credited openly in the credits. It's the same guy. You just had to know where to look. Part of me,
the chin is the dead giveaway. Watching the Phantom Menace, looking at both chins, it's like
legal.
Huh?
Yeah. I guess what was interesting about it is that to me, and I don't think it was intentional, but it felt like an Easter egg. It felt like it's there if you want to find it. If you want to know who this guy is or who this Dark Lord is, Darth Sidious. They kept calling him Darth Sidious in episode 1. And I was like, they do drop his name. Like, and that's one thing I've kind of forgot. And going back today, it's like, oh, they are saying Darth Sidious. I get so wrapped up in episode 3 that I forget that they didn't just force the word Darth Sidious. Like, they actually introduce him as such. And it was actually really cool. So the script, for me saying the bigger picture here, I want to talk about the script of episode 1. You see the groundwork, even visually, of what Palpatine is doing when they said, 2 there are, no more, no less. And it cuts right to him. Like, it goes into a focus shot of Palpatine watching the fire burn. I'm like, it's the giveaway. But they all but say it, and that's cool. Like, you are all but saying this to me, and the adult brain's like, he's right there, you fools. But the kid in me I did not know that because I didn't know what to look for at 9. No. And even at 12. So I watched Attack of the Clones. Even at 12, I'm like, ooh, this guy's so cool. We don't ever really see his face because you never see his face. And it isn't until Revenge of the Sith that you're like, that's the face. Oh, it's him. Oh, that's so cool. But then everyone's like, yeah, it's the same chin.
It's been the same actor. Have you not been watching the credits? Yeah. Come on, are you actually even a fan?
Going back now, the reason why I put on subtitles is I wanted to understand what is this whole, bureaucracy that they're doing and what they're actually trying to pitch here. This is a dry movie without the space knights and the laser guns and the amazing soundtrack. It's a dry movie about politics, about just...
The Trade Federation has blocked all trading and has invaded a planet to force them to sign a treaty so that they can do more trading.
It's the first thing in the credits of the scroll, the opening scroll. The first thing is about politics.
Turmoil, trade federation, stop shipping, Congress.
Yeah.
What?
Yes, and I'm watching it and I go, wow, post-COVID and Trump and all, like, I get more excitement watching what Trump is going to do, and I feel like it's more dramatic than what George Lucas was not thinking, big picture here. He thought all this was like, ooh, I have to decorate it with Star Wars stuff for me to tell a politics story. And that's what it is. The Queen is I mean, they have governors too, but the Queen is effectively the governor of her planet. Mm-hmm. And she's entrusting her senator to do the right thing. Your battle's here, mine's back on the planet. And even then, dude, the camera cuts away at the right moment, right when he's like, he nods and he lets Padme leave. And then as it does the side scroll, you see him grin for a quick second. I'm like, it's all there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, especially paying attention to the fact that, like, in one scene it's like, we'll force them to do this, and then the next scene it's okay, we can figure something out, just give me more power and I can fix it, it's all right. And then the next scene, we're not gonna fix it.
Yeah.
Just
this
like,
is foolish,
this man is playing both sides, like,
perfect. He's playing chess with himself.
Yeah, and it plays out in the end. You see it, like, the plays are laid bare to the whole audience, to all the characters, that there was no winning, because there was no way of finding out without being in this inner circle. The prequels, on the surface, they're bland. They're very like, okay, there's a kid who's going woo, there's a CGI character screaming and running around, there's some serious Jedi Knights who don't really get as much screen time as you want, doing all the cool things that you want them to do, but you get enough, you get the cool music, it's alright. And then you dive deeper into this and you're like, this space opera is amazing.
You're watching the space version of Frank Underwood and House of Cards unfold, where
oh my goodness, in that's the a great equivalent.
That's what it is. He gets what he wants through manipulation, and he's the real winner at the end of it. Not the Jedi. They lost Qui-Gon. They took in this kid they didn't want to take. Even
the girl
Obi-Wan
gets pushed onto the train tracks and dusts off his hand, and that's it.
That's it. Like, you have space Frank Underwood. That's what it is.
Now I can't stop picturing Kevin Spacey as Palpatine.
I will make it legal. Like, he just comes in. Now, Claire, what do you want me to do? I will be sending my apprentice. Or you see Palpatine just breaking the fourth wall. He's like, I love that woman. I love it more than sharks love blood.
I love democracy. I love the Republic.
And then he cuts back. God bless democracy. Yes, it's amazing. It's, oh my God, we just cracked something right here. Palpatine is Frank Underwood. It's one and the same.
Who knew we'd make that comparison in 2022?
I know.
After all that, but
he's the only one who wins. At the end of the movie, he's the only one who got exactly what he wanted, because he's playing both sides. And
I think as a character, or like if you're kind of stepping in his shoes, or like you're immersed in the movie, the man's got cojones for standing right there at the funeral, right next to a few Jedi, attending the death of someone that he ordered his apprentice to kill.
Yeah.
But he's there also to ensure that the Jedi is gone and that he is the last man standing in this tiny battle. Yeah. He gets to win.
He, not only that, it shows even in episode 1 how blind the Jedi are, or were. How full of themselves that they were. Sith Lord.
What?
You've been gone for a millennia. And it's like, yeah. And they've been waiting. And this is their time to strike. And you allowed this guy to attain power in a political sense, which maybe the bigger picture there is that's the real power is through the political side, not just ruling. What good is all this physical power, if no one will listen, then what you're gonna rule graves? No, you got to win them over, and that's what Palpatine.
An army will get you only so far.
Yeah, and Palpatine is charismatic. In that world, he portrays himself with all his grandiose. So it's like, it's not personal, it's politics. Da, 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 and he does this whole thing, and I'm like, okay, so he's a charismatic senator. He's Frank Underwood.
Like, it's stuck in your head now.
Oh my god, he's Frank Underwood. Like, that's what it is. It's you couldn't like. You can sense that there's a disturbance in the Force. Qui-Gon says it at the beginning too with Obi-Wan. They sense it, and I think if Qui-Gon did not die, if say he didn't die by Maul, he would have uncovered what was happening with Palpatine. I would argue sooner than anybody else. But if he becomes one with the Force and he's learned how to communicate with Yoda and all that stuff, then at that point maybe it was too late because now he's already in power. But Qui-Gon seems to be the only one who was level-headed as a Jedi. He was the one who finds Anakin and says that he's the one who's going to make things right. And
I'm not trying to solve slavery, but he could be the one that could change the tide of the war, or not even the war. Just there was no war at the time, really. It was kind of just
not yet. But he also knew there was something on the horizon. The Jedi were too full of themselves. Yoda is shown to be flawed, and the funny part of it, and even Mace Windu and all of them. And the funny part is that that's not how even George Lucas intended it to be. It's just something that we caught on after the fact because of the events that happened. They're supposed to look like these wise monks who are, don't get emotional, keep your zen, be balanced, be one with the Force.
Old. We're not going to do it. We're not going to deal with it. He's too old.
He's too old. And yeah, This is a win for Palpatine in Episode 1, completely.
Oh, easy win. All three movies, he wins.
Like the first 3 seasons of House of Cards. Oh my god, I can't stop.
and here's Randy's dissertation on why Frank Underwood is
Palpatine,
Emperor Palpatine, and why Emperor Palpatine is Frank Underwood. One thing I also noticed in this movie, kind of changing or switching gears a little bit.
Yeah,
they use the Force a whole bunch of times in this movie, or specifically Qui-Gon Jinn, every single setting. It's immediately new Force power. Like in the first one, or like when they're on the boarding party thing, like they're being shot at by droidekas come to shoot them. They do like a Force run all the way down the hallway to get out of the way. You're like, whoa, Jedi could do that. And then there's also the you'll give us mode of transportation out of the Gungan city or whatever, or just anything. He tries everything he can, or like flipping the dice on Tatooine. He does. He is very like, when the odds are stacked against him, just use the Force. Like the Force solves everything. It's insane. I didn't really catch on to that too much until this watch through. I'm like, he's a little bit too, maybe not too reliant, but like, he uses it whenever he can, or when
The Force run thing, I didn't even catch the first time, ever. Like, it wasn't until I know that when I was doing some brushing up on things about a month ago, I noticed that they had shown that. I was like, oh, look at that. Funny enough, too, that was actually a reshoot too, because Ewan McGregor had an ugly orange wig on. It was so bad. Like, wow. In every shot that Ewan McGregor's in, there was a reshoot after the principal photography of it. How bad was the first take of something that you need to go back and film it again on everything?
Well, he's aged like wine in his acting overall, in my opinion, going from this to like Big Fish and other things. He gets better with time.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
He definitely grabs his actor legs or sea legs or whatever in this case in terms of experience, and we see him in the trailer for Obi-Wan, and you're like, they're nailing it. Like, even though he's not great.
I don't want them to transition Ewan to Alec. I want that to just be a continuity hiccup that can we all agree that these were filmed, like almost 50, like half a decade apart. Like, can we just call it what it is, stagnate it, and just have Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan be the thing that it is as it moves forward? Because in my eye, my biased eye, that these are my Star Wars trilogy that I grew up with, he is my definitive Obi-Wan, not Alec Guinness.
Yeah.
And not because he's not a good Obi-Wan, it's just not the one I grew up with. Even though I watched 4, 5, 6 many times before 1, 2, and 3. Watching a young Obi-Wan have that much character development, and then they base the animated series off of his character, even though it's not the same voice actor.
No, but that's all right.
That's all right. Like, they base it off of that. Everything but Rebels, when he confronts Maul, everything was Ewan's Obi-Wan, and that's, fine.
To be fair, the cards are kind of stacked against Alec Guinness in that case, because there's a lot to talk about Obi-Wan when he's growing up.
Yeah.
There's not really too much to talk about when he's old, because it's mainly just, when do I die on the Death Star? It's looking like about 3 weeks from now. Okay, I guess I'll drink some bantha milk or whatever. I don't know.
Hey, listen, if they're going to reshoot and have Hayden Christensen come back as Vader for Return of the Jedi as a Force Ghost, I'm fine with just reshooting everything and have Ewan McGregor be Obi-Wan in the original trilogy too, because he now would have been of age the way they filmed the original Ben Kenobi anyway. But a licensee reason, like, no one can touch the original trilogy. That was George Lucas's takeaway when he sold. He's like, you can, whatever you got to do is what you got to do, but he did not sign.
If anyone's
over.
touching it, it's me.
Yeah,
and we're putting McClunky in it, and we're doing this.
He's
this
not. That's the one thing. He's like, I'm not changing it. I'm not correcting. Like this, the original trilogy is the one thing that he will not. That he did not sign over. Like, I have the final say and rights to that. Still,
it's his baby.
That's his. And you know what?
And this is
more
his
part
baby
of George
too.
Lucas. What I will say about George Lucas after watching episode 1 today. I really I at one point in my life I jumped on the bandwagon about hating on him, because watching episode 1 and comparing it to episode 7, I'd rather watch episode 1 every time. The fight scenes was better, and I know it's choreographed and it's supposed to be aerobatic and fancy and all, but that's what made it so great. Like, there is something to be said about having Kylo Ren be a little bit more raw and aggressive, and the fighting looks a little bit more realistic in episode 7 about how they were clashing and there's no twirling. But to see Jedi and Sith at their prime, and they have this dance.
You got Ray Park jumping around how he is as Maul.
Ray Park will forever be my Maul. Like, Sam Witwer's cool.
Hey, he breathes life into that character, or further life into that character, where it could have just stagnated, or it could have just been boring. Instead, they gave him an emotion. Like you were saying, I mean, we're supposed to be talking about episode 1, but post episode 1, they break Maul. Like, not just because he gets sliced in half by Obi-Wan. They take him down mentally to the point of, like, he's at rock bottom. There's no more further down that you could go. And then they build him up from there and make him almost a whole new character. Because in this, like, you kind of just get, he's kind of the creepy satanic looking dude.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have our revenge.
At last we'll do this, master. And then he becomes...
Yes, my master. Those were all his lines. Yeah. He was a bit of a devil-y thing there. I think it's important that we're talking about other episodes and other things that tie in, that have to do with 1, because at least in the sense of 1, it's a retrospective review that we're doing right now. Yeah. And what I really appreciate about 1 now is that I like the story. George Lucas told an original story with episode 1, and episode 7 was a rehash of 4. One thing for George Lucas, how he kills off his characters, with the exception of Qui-Gon, we don't really get much confirmation. Qui-Gon and Count Dooku are pretty solid that they're dead. Jango and Jango. Anything that involves a lightsaber, no, nay, because I'm about to contradict that. But besides those three, Jango, Dooku, Qui-Gon, everyone's death is a bit ambiguous. You know, from Mace to Boba to evidently Palpatine. Like everyone
somehow he returns.
Somehow, I mean, is Vader really dead? Is he really ever dead? The worst thing about episode 1 was the campiness that they made, you know, Jar Jar be the weird comic relief that I didn't agree with. And at the time, I was not on board with midichlorians. But now
I'm still not.
but how they try to introduce is like it's one with the Force and everything, and it runs and everybody's like, that's what Rian Johnson was trying to do with episode 8, where they were kind of incorporating these midichlorians again, where a random slave boy grabs the broom and with the Force, and because it runs through everybody if you know how to listen. And I think I understand. Episode 1 made me kind of understand episode 8 a little bit more, what they were trying to do, where this reluctant Luke Skywalker, this cranky old man who doesn't want nothing to do with it, and it kind of humanizes. But now recapping episode 1, it humanizes. We're like, all right, this is how it all starts, knowing how it's all going to end, even with the sequel trilogy. Like, oh. Like all that leading up to it, and just seeing the inception of all that happening, just made episode 1 that much better of a story for me.
They took chances, and they
took chances.
They were
introducing
calculated
new worlds.
Chances that paid off.
Yeah, every scene was a new world introduced. Tatooine is the only old world we saw.
Tatooine is. Don't get me started on Tatooine. The whole Star Wars universe is basically Tatooine and then some really cool other planet that they feature for like 15 to 20 minutes. Then
Welcome
back
to Phoenix, Arizona, and now anywhere else in the country.
Zavordo.
Wakanda, if you want, is basically right over here.
Literally anything else.
Literally
Tatooine.
anything else. And then you have Tatooine.
Jeez. If I was a Star Wars character, I would live as far away from Tatooine as I could. You think, like, you watch, like, The Mandalorian or Boba Fett or anything else, like, you think it's some, like, arid, abandoned planet that no one touches and it's all, like, quiet and all that. No. The place is bustling with life, even if it used to be a water planet at one point. Like, even as a sand planet that is all desert and all that, there is way too much life and events happening on it. I could not handle being there. Put me on Yavin 4. I'd rather be on Yavin 4. There's one big scare with Yavin 4, and then that's it. That's it. It's all done. There's nothing else going on. Maybe there's some stuff, the Star Wars lore that happens there, but otherwise, the movies don't touch on it. I think it's pretty much safe. I'm fine with trees.
Why is Tatooine so fixated all the time? Why is that the anchor?
Skywalkers? It's all the Skywalkers. The whole Skywalker trilogy is Anakin grew up there, Luke grew up there, and Rey lived on it for a while. Or not even lived on it. She was on Jakku.
And she's a Palpatine.
She was on Jakku. She wasn't even on Tatooine.
No, but she ended up on Tatooine. Yeah, but she ended up on it.
At the end. Whatever.
Again, that's not canon. That's fan fiction.
Whatever you say. One thing that I wanted to see if you noticed, there's a familiar actor who's in this movie who broke out as a famous actor in Pirates of the Caribbean a few years later.
Who?
Keira Knightley. She is the queen.
She's the decoy?
She's the decoy for most of the movie.
My heart.
When I was watching it, I'm like, well, hold on. Let me just look at the cast to, like, remember all these names. Who's Liam Neeson? Whatever that guy's name is.
Liam Wilson.
Liam Wilson. But then I see Keira Knightley. I'm like, Keira Knightley's in this? And her character name is, like...
Decoy Queen or something?
S-A-B and then E with, like, a tilde. Sabe or whatever. I don't know. Sabi.
Oh yeah, that's how she introduces her. He goes, "This is Sabe. This is whatever. She's my loyal bodyguard." And
I don't know.
That, yeah.
Anyways, she's in this for like almost the whole movie playing that character.
There's only 2 times or 3 times where where Natalie Portman is Queen Amidala in the makeup, and it's the very introduction when she I was about to say FaceTime. Screw it. When she FaceTimes Viceroy at the beginning of the film, and she's just sitting there and she's like,
"What up, y'all? It's your queen from Naboo here. Got no Gungans here."
How strong is the apple that now changes my verbiage? Like, oh, she's FaceTiming Viceroy. Yo, what up? Be sure to subscribe and like this video for more negotiations. Natalie Portman is introduced as Queen Amidala in the makeup then. Then she's introduced as Queen Amidala in the makeup again when she votes for no confidence
Nope.
at the Senate.
That wasn't her.
That was
Keira
her.
Knightley. That was Keira Knightley, I believe.
No, I just saw she changed over to the makeup.
I'll go take a look.
Guarantee.
I'm
And then the
pretty
third
sure
time
it's Keira Knightley.
is when she does the symbolic little ball thing at the end, and they're like, peace. Yeah.
Nope.
So
Keira Knightley.
she was at the Senate.
Yep.
I like Keira Knightley. I used to have a crush on her. Yeah. That's funny. Dang. Chancellor Palpatine, or not Chancellor. Oh, did Palpatine know that was the decoy?
I don't know. I don't think
Plot
so.
hole.
Necessarily.
Again, this is one of the things where I'm like, there's some stuff that didn't hold throughout the film. If judging it on a standalone film, I'm like, it falls short. There's some like, did Palpatine know he was talking to the decoy? Viceroy goes, get her. This is a decoy. And
that was genius in writing, because it's like, here's the real queen, but they don't know if it's the real queen, and then, or no, they think it's the real queen, and then the queen comes walking in, and they're like,
Viceroy, you're done. Boom, boom, get her. This is a decoy.
And then they chase after the decoy.
Shuts the doors. Now let's talk. This is the real one. Like,
this is unfair.
Yeah. Another thing is the first time we see Palpatine, and another I feel like is an Easter egg, is the first time we're introduced to that character is on the hologram, and it's getting disrupted with the signal, and he goes out of like, it seems that all things are and that's the first time we see Palpatine. And I should have known then too, as it was like, it kind of looks like Darth Sidious, because it is. And I even think I believe, I could be wrong, but I think the old action figures of like the late 80s had the Emperor as Palpatine. He was listed as I think they listed his name Palpatine. I believe they did. So I'm just this is me trying to find a way, like, how was Episode 1 really trying to... Episode 1 had a lot of weight to carry at the time of making that film, that it needs to start bridging all these gaps from 4, 5, 6 to Episode 1. There's a lot of pressure to get Episode 1 right. At least,
do you think
right
it
enough.
Succeeded at the time? Or I guess that goal, or basically this high bar that the original trilogy set, it needed to reach it. It did.
Okay. Yeah, and here's why. In 99, I remember I knew the name Kenobi, and I know Skywalker.
I've heard that name before.
Now that is a name. Obi-Wan Kenobi is introduced as a young person. Anakin is a child. And you know Anakin's going to be Vader. It's premised on that. Even the hooded, cloaked figure, which is, Darth Sidious, the Emperor, you don't know he's the Emperor. That part you don't really understand, but just we will make it and all that is like, oh, this is him. And one thing that you don't really think about from Episode 6 to Episode 1 in that order is you don't think about the disfiguration on his face yet, because he wasn't really disfigured in Episode
just been young.
6. He was just young, and we don't see his eyes at any point. So they did very well to disguise all that, and we didn't come to this conclusion, or I guess we as Lucasfilm did not decide that it was going to be a disfiguration until they did Revenge of the Sith, but he could have just been young, and then he got old and frail, and his eyes are
and gross.
Yeah. And we don't ever see his forehead, because the only thing I remember in episode 6 is that he does have that big welt thing going on. He had like a butt forehead. And that was that. He was kind of weird looking, but outside that, he was
brain coral.
Yeah, that's it.
That's what it reminds me of.
We see the Emperor for who the Emperor is in episode 1. Check. We see Anakin Skywalker knowing that this is to be Darth Vader, and everything that they say, much fear in you I sense, and all. Okay. We see Yoda at the prime of Yoda in puppet form. You're like, that's Yoda. Check, check. We see Obi-Wan Kenobi. Check. We see Tatooine. Check. There's a lot of bridging that's happening there. And then we see what life was supposed to be before the Empire. And that part was established I remember the promo happening in 99 of them saying that, like, before the Empire, before Skywalker, see how it all begins, and pod racing, everything's like brighter. Yeah, everything just felt happier and brighter. It wasn't a dark film. Episode 3 was a dark film, visually and narratively. Episode 1 was not that. So I think they did a good job making all those initial connections, because the only thing you're really lacking then from the original is there's no children, because the father of the children is a child himself. So there's no Skywalker, but you see Skywalker in name. And there's no Han Solo, but that's it wasn't, he was supposed to be a side character, it's not his story to tell. I think at the time for 99, it did do well. As time went on, no, I think there was a period where episode 1 felt it didn't age well enough. It went through its teenage years is what had happened. You know what I mean? Like it got kind of funny looking. It just, at one point I didn't want to really look at it or acknowledge it. I'm like, yeah, that was bad. But one thing that everyone would even back then acknowledge is that fight scene was dope and the music was epic. But as I've gotten older, I appreciate the script more. Boring politics, because it's like, wow.
It's all world building.
Huh?
It's all world building. You're getting a bigger window or a better look at what's going on in the galaxy. As a kid, you're like, can we just get to the cool saber fight? But as an adult, like you're getting at, you get to peer a little bit more behind the curtain and see more about what's going on and why things are happening, or what the director or the writer is trying to convey with all these conversations.
How do you feel? Do you think it bridged well, or what are your thoughts with episode 1?
So it's tough, because I don't even know how old I was when I watched it, but I know when it came out, I was 4. But watching it, I just thought it was cool seeing all the different characters. Whether it was a success or not, it remains for my adult mind to nail that down. And I think it didn't succeed. I think, like many outlets have said, it was a commercial failure. It brought people to the theater to watch it, but it didn't continue that. It may have broken some box office records for the time, but it was an impulse. That's all it was. It was just an impulse of excitement, but it didn't really carry the momentum that everyone wanted. It wasn't a Return of the Jedi moment or Empire Strikes Back moment. It was very much like, why is there kids screaming Yahoo in front of me? Or when are we going to get Vader? Or when are we going to get more awesome battles or anything? Like the droid army, I guess, is interesting, but I don't know.
No, the droid army, Roger, you're under arrest. Even as a kid, I was like, that's weird.
Hold on.
Yeah, that was too much. Yeah. Can I tell you something? When the door opens and you see Maul in his hood and he looks up and he goes like this, the very first time it left such an impact. The very first time I saw the trailer and that scene happened, my brain completely omitted the lifting of the head, and all I saw was a hooded figure. And I thought in the trailer at 9, I thought I was looking at a baby Vader.
That would have been interesting.
I
Anakin
thought-
was always evil.
Yes, I thought this child who was with the Jedi, as the trailer was portraying that he was being picked up by the Jedi, tricked him. And he was always Vader. And we don't know what happens with the burns or whatever, but by what looked like the end of the trailer and what was going to be the end of the film, as the door opens and the hooded thing, I thought that was Darth Vader. And I was like, and it wasn't until later trailers were coming out where I was like, oh, that's somebody else. That's the devil, because he looks like the devil.
Yeah. Their design was interesting with Darth Maul. And I think the staffing, I think, did a good job with setting up all these characters. They chose all the right people. The costume department did a great job with everything. Like, I look at what Padme is wearing when she's disguised as a Queen's Guard or whatever, and it's just like this like orange, like felt like almost like 80s looking thing that you'd have on your couch or whatever, or like on your carpet. Like, pretty cool and interesting. And everything that they go from just a simple scarf to a whole entire face makeup do-over of just like horns and everything, like amazing. I think they did great. I think just you kind of have to dig into the story and appreciate what the writer is trying to tell you, or like what the director is trying to convey in that scene, and then how it carries over to a few scenes later, or an hour later, or a whole movie later. And I think that's why it was considered a commercial failure.
I like that you are still holding it accountable for what its purpose, I guess, was supposed to be. And that's what I'm trying to still wrap my head around, is that like episode 1's purpose was to begin bridging the gap of the original trilogy. And I'm lenient, and I can't help but be lenient because of everything that followed from that outside of the prequels. Like I have a level of, honestly, I have a level of guilt of on George Lucas for so long.
Everyone did.
And I felt so bad when he sold it, and and I saw the interview, that famous interview of him talking about it's like a breakup, like a divorce, and he's like, I can't do what people want me to do for it, what they want it to be. He's like, so it doesn't belong to me anymore. And that hurts. Like, as I got older, I felt very rude and immature about it, because I was like, as a creator, I get where he's coming from, and that pressure sucks. Having that much success on something, and then it's bigger than you. And I joke, I'm like, I swear George Lucas created Star Wars on accident, because you look at all the movies he did leading up to it and everything he's done before, like nothing comes close to what he did with Star Wars. But with Star Wars, he nailed it. And I have guilt for getting on the bandwagon, like, you suck, and then making fun of Anakin. I can't stop thinking about you, Padme, and all that. Like, I'm talking about hating, sand, its course, it gets everywhere. Like making fun of his acting and stuff like that. Even though I've seen Hayden Christensen in other movies, from Jumper to
a lot of people quote that one because that was basically his last film, and then that went was his last farming. Film.
Yeah. I saw that one. I saw like a house, like a glass house. He did one before episode 2, like a glass house or something like that. And he's an angsty teenager type. And he showcases his acting a little bit, but like he got so much hate for how he did Anakin, and I blame myself for doing it too. And then the real dark times of the sequel trilogy got so bad, I was like, oh my god, the prequels were actually like palatable. I can actually enjoy these, and I harbor guilt, so I can't help but be more lenient on episode 1, and I suspect how I look at episode 2 and 3. The thing about little disclosure here, episode 3, I'm gonna watch it because I love the film. I don't need to watch it. I watched that movie, Mike, no exaggeration, at least 30 times in my life. It's probably the most watched. It's probably the most watched film I've ever watched. Probably next to Dark Knight.
Mine would be Avengers. That thing I watched in theaters, I think 10 to 15 times, and then after it came out on DVD, I watched it. I don't know, probably at least 5 or 7 times.
That was my episode 3.
Yeah. I mean, I was a fan of episode 3 as well. Seeing two blue lightsabers clash together does something to you when you're a big fan after watching 4, 5, and 6, and then 1 and 2. You're like, what? They fight each other, and it's not like some bad guy who stole a Jedi's lightsaber and is using it. Like, it's quite literally.
You very clearly see Anakin and Obi-Wan going at it. You're like,
it's the death of a friendship. It's a death of a relationship in the most.
In every sense of it being an art piece, it felt biblical.
Star Wars is very biblical at its roots, especially in this movie with Shmi Skywalker saying, "There's no father. I just had him. I raised him. He's mine." And then she has to let him go. Yeah. And then she perishes. It's all biblical. I mean, George Lucas, he definitely,
not like you so said, subtle.
He could have stumbled into it, but a lot of this is very much just mirroring other stories or realities of everything going on in his world. And you can see it sometimes as clear as day, but other times, like what we talked about in this podcast, it's a little bit more behind the curtain that if you're paying attention, you can see the underlying tone, you can see the underlying mission, the goal of not just the characters, but the movie in general. I think hindsight is what saves the prequels. On, like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, surface level, it's a boring movie at times. Like politics, if you're not into it, this freaking sucks.
They devote it over 5 minutes, closer to 10, of them just swimming underwater. And I don't mean talking in the city. I mean just there's always a bigger fish and and all that. Like, there was all of that. Felt dragged on. When I went to Disney Plus, I go, all right, boop, boop. 2 hours and 12 minutes? What? My wife goes, this is supposed to be a 90-minute film. I don't want to wait that. And I'm like, this is Star Wars and you will show its respect. But then part of me goes like, oh my God, is this longer than I remember? All right, let me go to the bathroom. Let me sit down. If I need to pause, I'll pause. But I'm going to try to get it done in one go. I didn't get it done in one go. I needed to take a little break. But there was a lot of, on surface level, I'm just like, I felt myself wanting to go on my phone. And I took a photo and I sent you. It's like, all right, here we go. I'm living for it. And this is when it started to pick up. It doesn't start picking up until after the pod racing.
About an hour in.
About an hour in. That first hour, I would have rewritten. Believe you me, in episode 1, I would rearrange things. Staying true to the vision, I would move pieces around and still tell the same story and just make it more viable. Just make it like emphasize certain things a little bit more. Yeah, I would try
not just like in color, but in story writing.
Yeah. The whole point of Anakin pod racing and then talking to the pilot like, oh, you pick on quickly, is because they need to convey that Anakin was a good pilot.
Meanwhile, a few minutes later, the thing's on autopilot. I don't know how to turn it off. Also, I guess I'll mention this as a side tangent. The autopilot takes him out of the hangar Naboo straight to the battle station, the droid battle station.
Yeah.
And then flies him around in danger.
Yes.
And then he has to have R2 shut it down by a computer.
Yeah,
there's no switch.
Yeah.
What is up with, like, convenience, I guess, is the answer. But, like, why is this programmed into this ship? It's automatically ready to go up there.
That's something I would change. That's something I would have changed. That's a prime example, actually, of what I would change, because that was completely unnecessary.
R2, what's going on? I guess I'll shoot the droids. Why can't I control?
A few things. Just visual elements I noted. 1, first time we see R2, there's another R2 unit. And I mean
one that looks exactly like him, but it's green. But the color is very tough
I didn't
to see
green.
First.
I saw blue.
I saw blue too. I'm like, it's another R2. But then when
because I'm not talking about that red one. I'm talking about the literal.
Yeah. I'm like, it's another R2. But once he gets close to the elevator up, you can see the greenish tone to it. I'm like, okay. It's not another carbon copy that
Myth
Grant Imahara
busted.
made.
I thought it was a cheap copy paste. I thought, oh, this is the Disney Plus edition.
I'm glad you said myth busted because was it Grant Imahara made that R2 for episode 1? One of the Mythbusters. He put in all the work and time for that because I'm not too sure if Warwick Davis, I think he plays R2 or someone else plays R2. I forget. I don't know if Warwick Davis. Oh, Kenny Baker. That's who it is. Kenny Baker. I guess Kenny, he is
the OG. He's the OG.
Warwick Davis. Who was he? I think he was an Ewok, maybe.
I met Kenny a few times before he passed. I met him. I met him right before he passed. Actually, less than a year before he died. Yeah, I was at a convention and he was there signing things, and after a while, I know for these guys it all felt the same, but I was like, hi Kenny, I saw you back in San Diego Comic-Con last year. But I just want to say I really appreciate what you've done, and I think I was 14, 15. Wow. So I was young. I was like, I just want you to know that like these movies do matter, and I'm glad that you came back. I know that they do computers for things, but you agreed to come back, and I don't know if it's money related. I don't care. I'm just glad that you did it because if there's an authenticity to it, and he was like, at this point, his voice was very like, he was older. He was coughing a lot, and he was just like, hey, thank you very much. And, he's a little guy, but he was just like, I really appreciate. Thank you. He's like, I love doing these things. I love meeting you guys, and it's fun doing the things outside of filming. And I'm like, cool. I was like, all right, well, hopefully, I bumped you again. And that was the last time I ever saw him. He died less than a year after that.
Jeez, what a special moment. That's amazing. That warms my heart. Honestly, that's great to hear.
He was so cool. Another guy equally cool. I met the guy who played in the suit, not the voice of the OG Boba Fett. I forget his name.
There's a nice piece about him on Disney Plus.
Yes, and I watched it, and I say it still doesn't do him justice. He waited at Comic-Con. He waited for. He was like, I was like, wait, I could go get the money. Hold on, and he's like, don't even listen. Don't even worry. Come here. I'll sign the thing. Let's talk. And when your dad gets back, and we'll do it then. Like, he just took me at my word, and I was like, you don't understand. You're my favorite character, because Boba Fett's my favorite. He is my favorite character. Like, you don't understand. You're my favorite.
You only said like one or two lines, but you're great.
And you're not even the one talking. That's not even your voice, but just you standing there like, I like green because of you.
If only he was alive today and was able to watch this, I could only imagine like him connecting the dots between
he would
that statement and then seeing your car and your phone.
Yeah.
For you, it'd be like, my whole life is dedicated to you, sir. And he's just like, that's great, son.
I met him twice. Wow. The first time, it was in passing. He was signing with the young Boba actor. So this had to have been 2003.
Oh, yeah.
Those two were on a panel. So he was meeting, and he was walking. I shook his hand. I was like, hi. And I told my dad, like, can I go say... I don't know if I told you this, Mike. I don't know if I've ever said... My dad used
to new to me.
He was head security for the San Diego convention for the security company that was down there at the time. So... back then they were a little bit looser with these conventions, and I was able to get in just because he was one of the head security people down there. So I was able to do all these things strictly because my dad was working. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. For the longest time in my life, I had the signed thing.
Jeremy Bullock.
Jeremy. He comes back in the prequels as somebody else. He's in episode 3.
I'll look out for him, or we should look out for him then.
It's a cameo. If you don't know what he looks like, it will pass you. But he's my hint is that he plays one of the good guys but it's a cameo, and he has lines. He actually talks, but he's in it. Jeremy's actually in the film, and I talked to him about that too. I was like, "Oh my God, you're in the film, and you're not Boba Fett." And he's like, "Ah, no, they asked me if I wanted to come back." But he's such a sweet man. Yeah, meeting him and meeting R2 was so cool. C-3PO, the actor who played C-3PO was there, but I did not get a chance to talk to him before. So I was just like, "Oh, hey, look, there's 3PO and Chewbacca." But I did not get to talk to those guys. I only got to talk to Kenny, and Kenny was he took his time too. So that's cool. Things like that. Yeah, man, I can't help but no wonder I'm so positive towards the prequels and everything, because like my memory wrapped around it is so.
It's like ingrained in your DNA.
It feels like it, yeah.
It's the midichlorians in you.
It is the midichlorians. You asked me a question, and I wanted your input on it.
Okay.
Do you feel the music elevated the film, and does it stand the test of time?
Absolutely, yes to both.
Okay.
I think what I maybe mentioned, but I'll mention again. The moment you hear that droid army march play when they're fighting the Gungans, you know what's going on. You're in it. With any of the other songs, like, it's a switch immediately. Once the notes start being played, your head's in the space, whether you're new to the series or you've watched it as a kid and now you're watching as an adult, or you're either or in between. You know that this music is conveying the tone of what you're supposed to be feeling at this moment, and it's not in your face too much. The visuals help with that, but like you said, it's playing the supplemental role, but it's playing such a primary or a strong supplementary role that it's almost in tandem with the visuals, to where it's hard to separate. You think about Star Wars, and I guess first you think about Jedi or lightsabers, but I'd say at least in the top 10 or maybe top 5 things that you think about Star Wars just as an IP, the music has to be in there for most people. John Williams does too good of a job in these.
Agreed.
It tugs on your heartstrings when you think about it. Like, just all these beautiful pieces that he's made. He's still alive from the time that we're recording this. God rest his soul whenever he dies. But
it's gonna be a sad day.
It'll be a very sad day. I could only guess what music they're gonna play at his funeral. But what I'm trying to get at is the music is very impactful. It's hard to separate. It's hard to not talk about Star Wars, or to talk about Star Wars and not about the music, because the music is as much of a character as the characters that are in it.
The Duel of Fates song, why it's called Duel of Fates, you know that lore, that reason why that song was called Duel of Fates?
Educate
back
me.
then?
In the audience, I guess.
Hey, if somebody goes out of their way to watch this and they don't know who we are, if you guys are listening to the show or anything strictly because you're a Star Wars fan, this might not be surprised to you, but it surprised me, and I would consider myself a fanatic. Duel of Fates became Duel of Fates even then because they were dueling for the fate of Anakin, and Qui-Gon lost.
Okay.
The Duel of Fates does not play when Obi-Wan fights Maul, but it does play when they're both fighting Maul, and it's still focused when Qui-Gon is up on that platform fighting Maul by himself, and Obi-Wan's playing catch-up. Because they are fighting for the fate of the Chosen One. And at the time, the Jedi lose. And it's symbolic that he turns to the dark side, because in that one, he loses to it. And then it gets overpowered by good, because at the end of the day, good should triumph over evil. That's the moral of the story we're trying to teach here. But it is not a coincidence that the song ends before Obi-Wan fights Darth Maul. But that's why that song keeps coming back in episode 2 and in episode 3 around Anakin. You only hear Duel of Fates for a second when he's on his speeder trying to go save his mother because of that battle, that conflict. We'll cover it again when we do episode 2.
I'll listen for it.
That's the one and only time that Duel of Fates comes back again, and then you hear it again next to Battle of the Heroes and Anakin versus Obi-Wan and all that. Duel of Fates is tied directly to Anakin, but in episode 1, it doesn't really showcase Anakin except when he's in the spaceship for a second as he's shooting the battle droids, and then he takes off to go autopilot up to the space. Duel of Fates is tied specifically to Anakin. And I say this because, again, one, it will reappear in episode 2 for a quick moment, and it's when you see Anakin struggling the most with the Sand People. And then episode 3, it's prevalent in the final fight. But then that also tells me, so one, that's the reason of that music and why that song is so good, and it's
the hidden meaning.
The hidden meaning. I found out maybe a year or two ago what that meaning was. I was like, oh, that makes more sense. When they use it for a purpose, that particular song. So where I'm going with that is that they used it in the trailer of Kenobi. The Duel of Fates is still on. Like, you can make the case that it's also with Obi-Wan. Except the only reason why it's not with Obi-Wan is because in episode 2 it only plays for Anakin, and the writers actually said like this was about Anakin's fate. So Duel of Fates plays all the way up, at least until Kenobi still. So that makes me happy, but I don't suspect we would ever hear Duel of Fates again, anything post Skywalker or anything like that.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Yeah. Don't ruin a good thing.
Don't yuck the yum.
Don't yuck the yum. But anyway, yeah. So just a little thing right there, and that's one reason why I really loved Phantom Menace for so long, because I thought it was the greatest fight ever, and I thought it was the greatest song ever.
That's pretty good.
And then episode 3 just kind of trumped those two. Spoiler there, but that's it.
So I guess to end this podcast a little bit, do you have a favorite character or moment in this movie that we maybe did not go over, or is maybe just to note as kind of like a last spotlight on a special moment in this gem that is the Phantom Menace?
Okay, I'll go first, and you conclude with yours. I would normally say Palpatine, but
you mean
we
Frank
did
Underwood?
talk about him. But you Frank Underwood. Boba Fett was my favorite character for the longest time until I saw Darth Maul.
Mm-hmm.
And then Darth Maul was competing for favorite character, and it's strictly because of that fight scene. And I guess in lore, in the sense that like favorite character or favorite moment was that biggest bust is that they did not give Darth Maul a better, bigger backstory leading up to it for its time.
Yeah.
I know they retcon things with the series, but we're just talking as a standalone film. Maybe what made him cool was the whole Boba Fett appeal, that he was a silent character and you want to know more about him, but he died too quickly. Because let's call it what it was. In '99, he died in that film. So
yep.
Fandom brought him back to life, but for all intents and purposes, he died there. Mm-hmm. And they did him dirty like that, in the sense that they should have done more, because I think he actually would have had a cooler involvement of it. But I get why they did what they did.
No more than 2.
Yeah. No more than 2. No, favorite character is actually probably going to be more of a favorite. I actually appreciate how they showed the new worlds. That it's not a character.
That's okay.
I feel like the worlds within themselves act like a character. Seeing Coruscant with fresh eyes, as like this is our first time being introduced to Coruscant, this planet, this city that's a planet, or this planet that's a city, nothing more.
Yes.
Is so. Oh, that's cool. So that's kind of like an empire, but no, that's a cloud city, so it's not the same. But it's very busy. It's very metropolitan. everybody's the main character of their story there. That's so cool. Naboo is neat, you know, all things considering. I liked seeing Naboo be what it was outside of the underwater part. I cannot care less about that.
It's a nice dichotomy that you love the green hills, you hate the gooberfish.
yeah. But Naboo was cool, and Coruscant was so awesome. Just kind of see how, there's governance in the galaxy. This is what a republic is supposed to look. It felt very Greek. It felt very
There was that ethos.
We saw their version of like a Colosseum in the form of the chamber of the Senate.
We get to see the actual Colosseum in the next one.
Right.
On Geonosis.
Which I'm sure I'll have things about the planet. But so for me, seeing the new planets, that was really cool. Just again to be like, yeah, all right, that's right. This is the first time we're introduced to this.
Sure.
And then there's Tatooine.
What's funny about that is my favorite, I guess maybe character or scene, as I framed it earlier, is the pod racing portion of the movie. I think it just happened when I watched it yesterday. Actually 2 days ago. I split the watching into 2 days because I watched the first hour. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be able to stay awake for the rest of this film just because I'm a little bit bored of all the politics. And like you said, you had to take a break about an hour in. So watching the second hour of it was good, but it was nice ending, I think, on the pod race that first day. Just because all of the appreciation that I had as an adult looking at this 1999, not even 1999 because it was all done in animation probably in 1997, 1998 or however long that they were working on it. Just the ideas, the visuals, the character building, all of that in that short of time. Like you've got these two-headed guys who you never see again describing all these racers with all their quirks. Like as again, on the surface level, you're like, I'm never going to see this person again. Who cares? But watching it and kind of involving yourself in this race of like, here's Quadranero and his speeder or whatever, like his pod racer and his pit crew, or I don't know, just all the different characters that they introduce, and then just to see the dynamics that they bring into this brief moment of struggle for Anakin, but also the wonder of the galaxy and all the different facets that they go with, especially with like the ingenuity that Anakin has in the race, seeing that he's forced to take the service ramp, but is able to glide it down with ease instead of plummeting straight into the ground like a plane.
Yeah, that's right.
Stuff like that.
I missed that. I didn't catch that until now as an adult when I saw that part, like him coming down and pulling it. Like that was like, oh,
flipping the switches.
All this is supposed to show that he's this great pilot. That's where I felt like they overdid it, though. Not in the race itself, but just in general. Like if you're just trying to show that Anakin was a good pilot, you had the other two films to also showcase that, but they really emphasized that, like, oh, he's a quick learner, blah blah blah. But the pod racing was a quick break, but it was a mental break from all the politics talking and the droids and Viceroy this, and
it wasn't even a lightsaber battle. It was just, can he win the race? It's like the little kid at the Little League game. Can he score the home run?
Yeah.
And he does. It delivers. Is it very convenient that Anakin has like a 15-second delay at the beginning of the race and then has another like maybe 5 or 10-second delay because of Sebulba?
Right.
Is it realistic that he won? Probably not. It just shows that Sebulba probably has a very slow pod racer and relies on his
sabotaging everybody else.
Yeah, his dastardly deeds just to win.
With his evil curled mustache.
That's all he is.
Speed racer.
Oh my goodness. What a callback. Yeah, that's probably the thing that I took away from this movie this time around was the appreciation of the pod racing and how it was this special moment in time in this movie that can never really be taken away, even if you try adding more Tusken Raiders to it or give Quadranero more screen time or something. I don't know. Like, doesn't matter. It's still a pretty good demonstration of the technology of the time and the storytelling without, I guess, maybe to sum it up, the first the first maybe minute, if I recall correctly, of the race is just the engine noises of all the different pod racers that are all unique. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if there was music, but if there was, just...
It started off with music, and then it went a long time with no music, and then... It's so funny you bring up the music, because I was making note of that. Started with music, no music for a long time, brought back music as it's coming to the climactic, like, here coming to the finish line, photo finish, and then, they're hooked, and who's gonna make it? And that's when the music started building back up again. And that's pod racing.
Yeah, characters like Kitster and all the other ones are the reason why I do not want to watch it again. But the visual masterpieces and the music is what brings me back. So
it was a brighter film than I remembered it being, and I don't know if that was intentional, like for the narrative, or is any part of this film not CGI or blue screen or anything like that? Tatooine. That's the one thing that's always... It's definitively never that. It's always film. Like, maybe that's why they keep doing it. But like, it was a bright film. Like, even knowing that, seeing all the darker parts of what's happening on Coruscant, like, it's a bright film. And I just knowing that, like, it gets really red in episode 2 and it gets really red and dark in episode 3 is like, they purposely, like, this was a very bright film.
To wrap it up, thank you again, Randy, for joining me. I'm looking forward...
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I'm looking forward to reviewing Attack of the Clones. Again, if you haven't caught on, audience, and whoever's listening, if you're still listening to this, thank you for listening all the way through this. This is in anticipation for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. So each time we bring up Obi-Wan...
We haven't said that on air.
We have not.
That's why I kept alluding to Kenobi, because I just realized you're right. We haven't said that while recording, but that's the whole...
This isn't out of the blue because I'm like, Randy, Nick and I never finished Star Wars, the masterpiece, if you're wanting to include 7, 8, and 9 in it or not. We didn't finish it. We need to finish it. No, it's all because... Ewan McGregor's coming back as this...
If you haven't caught on, this is all about Kenobi, which is why I emphasized a lot about that.
It's all about this beloved actor and character that we grew to love and adore for, I guess, half a decade. Or a decade and continuing onwards to the next decade. We still talk about him. And he's a special character, and I think it deserves a special spotlight. And with that spotlight, some lenses that are the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode. But anyways, thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good day or night or morning or whatever time zone you're in.
Have a good time zone.
Have a good time zone. There we go. See you later.
Bye.